Few intellectuals of the 21st century have generated as much controversy as Jordan Peterson. A Canadian psychologist, professor, and best-selling author of 12 Rules for Life, Peterson became known not only for his work in psychology, but also for his outspoken defense of free speech, individual responsibility, and intellectual independence. In an age increasingly defined by political polarization, cultural conflict, and ideological activism, Peterson emerged as one of the most influential voices challenging what he viewed as the growing pressure to conform. While his critics often portray him as divisive, his supporters see him as something far different. A man willing to defend unpopular truths when remaining silent would have been easier. At the heart of Peterson's message lies a simple but powerful idea. Individuals must think for themselves. Throughout history, some of humanity's greatest tragedies occurred when people stopped doing exactly that. One of Peterson's lifelong academic interests has been the study of totalitarianism. He spent years examining the psychological and social forces that allowed regimes such as Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union to gain power. His conclusion was unsettling. The greatest danger is not merely political institutions. It is the human tendency to surrender independent judgment in exchange for belonging, certainty, and ideological comfort. Peterson often warns against what he calls ideological possession, a state in which individuals stop seeing reality as it is and begin viewing everything through the lens of a political or ideological doctrine. The 20th century provides countless examples of this phenomenon. Millions of people embraced grand political visions that promised utopia, but ultimately delivered oppression, censorship, imprisonment, and mass death. For Peterson, the lessons of history are not relics of the past. They are warnings for the present. And it was this concern that thrust him into the international spotlight. In 2016, Peterson became widely known for his opposition to Canada's Bill C-16. The legislation expanded protections related to gender identity and gender expression. Peterson argued that the law represented something more significant than a simple civil rights measure. His concern was not primarily about transgender individuals themselves. Rather, he believed the legislation opened the door to what he called compelled speech, the idea that governments could begin dictating not merely what citizens could not say, but what they must say. For Peterson, that distinction was crucial. Freedom of speech does not exist merely to protect popular opinions. Popular opinions require no protection. The real test of free speech is whether society tolerates views that are unpopular, controversial, or offensive. This principle has deep roots in the Anglo-American tradition. More than 150 years ago, John Stuart Mill argued in his classic work on liberty that silencing an opinion robs humanity. If the opinion is true, society loses the opportunity to correct its errors. If the opinion is false, society gains a clearer understanding of why the truth matters. Mill believed that open debate was not a threat to civilization. It was one of the foundations of civilization itself. Peterson's argument follows a similar logic. Once a society grants authorities the power to regulate language in the name of a noble cause, it becomes increasingly difficult to define where those limits should end. History suggests that restrictions on freedom rarely arrive all at once. They arrive gradually. A small restriction appears reasonable. A larger one follows. Over time, people adapt to the new reality. The boundaries of acceptable thought become narrower. The fear of speaking honestly becomes stronger. Eventually, self-censorship becomes normal. This concern is not unique to Peterson. The Austrian economist Ludwig von Mises once warned that freedom of thought and freedom of expression are inseparable from a free society. A government powerful enough to control ideas eventually becomes powerful enough to control much more. Similarly, Murray Rothbard argued that the free exchange of ideas is essential for individuals to challenge authority and expose errors in political institutions. Neither thinker believed that truth emerges from coercion. Truth emerges through voluntary discussion, debate, and the competition of ideas. Peterson often points to universities as an example of where these tensions are most visible. Institutions originally designed to encourage inquiry and intellectual exploration increasingly face pressure to enforce ideological conformity. Many professors, students, journalists, and public figures now operate under the fear that expressing the wrong opinion could lead to social punishment, professional consequences, or public outrage. Whether one agrees with Peterson's conclusions or not, the phenomenon itself is difficult to ignore. The rise of cancel culture, online outrage campaigns, and ideological tribalism has transformed public discourse across much of the Western world. People are increasingly encouraged to choose sides rather than seek understanding. Complex questions become simplified into moral battles. Nuance disappears. Dialogue becomes confrontation. Peterson's response to this trend is remarkably consistent. Tell the truth. Take responsibility. Think independently. Speak honestly. These principles may sound simple, but Peterson argues that they are among the most difficult disciplines a person can practice. His philosophy is rooted in the belief that meaning is found not through comfort, but through responsibility. Modern culture often emphasizes personal happiness as the ultimate goal. Peterson disagrees. Happiness comes and goes. Meaning endures. Meaning is found in carrying burdens voluntarily, in caring for one's family, in building something valuable, in developing competence, in facing chaos without surrendering to despair. This emphasis on responsibility is one reason Peterson resonates with millions of people, particularly young men. Many feel disconnected, directionless, and alienated in modern society. Rather than offering easy solutions or political slogans, Peterson challenges them to improve themselves first. Clean your room. Tell the truth. Stand up straight. Take ownership of your life. These ideas became cultural phenomena because they addressed something deeper than politics. They addressed the human search for purpose. Peterson's critics often argue that he exaggerates the dangers of modern ideological movements. His supporters argue that he recognizes patterns others refuse to see. Regardless of where one stands, it is difficult to deny his influence. His lectures have reached millions. His books have sold worldwide. His interviews have sparked debates across politics, psychology, philosophy, and culture. More importantly, he has forced people to ask difficult questions. How much freedom are we willing to sacrifice in pursuit of social harmony? Who gets to decide which ideas are acceptable? Can a society remain free if its citizens are afraid to speak honestly? And perhaps the most important question of all, how do ordinary people resist the temptation to surrender their judgment to the crowd? The French political thinker Alexis de Tocqueville warned about what he called the tyranny of the majority, a form of social pressure that can be just as powerful as government censorship. People may technically remain free, yet become afraid to express dissenting opinions because of social consequences. Peterson believes that danger is very real. Not because modern democracies resemble the dictatorships of the 20th century. They do not. But because the psychological mechanisms that made those systems possible still exist within human nature. The desire for certainty, the desire to belong, the desire to avoid conflict. These impulses are universal, and if left unchecked, they can gradually erode the foundations of a free society. Ultimately, Jordan Peterson is not offering a political blueprint for a perfect world. In fact, he is deeply skeptical of utopian visions. Instead, his message is far more personal. Take responsibility for your own life. Resist ideological fanaticism. Defend the freedom to think and speak honestly. Pursue truth, even when it is uncomfortable. And never forget that free societies depend not only on free institutions, but on courageous individuals willing to defend them. That may be the central lesson of Jordan Peterson's work, and perhaps one of the most important lessons for our time.